Chuck Schumer had threatened Trump for criticizing the intelligence community not too long ago. And now recently Trump just spoke out saying that intelligence communities are illegally giving information to the media. So that, if assuming this stuff is true, it's clear that there's a divide there. And I believe that the Trump admin and FBI had spoken out saying that there's no legal issue going on with the Flynn conversations. It's really only a trust issue. So I want to center back on this the Flynn resignation and the implications of that and what that really means with the Trump admin and whether or not we feel he was part of the problem or just a casualty of war. Jay, why don't you start?
Again, hard to say. I've seen analysis of this situation that Trump's accepting of Flynn's resignation indicates that he is able to be bullied by deep state or opposing faction operatives. If he were truly in power, he would have refused that resignation. So, good question. It could be some sort of 5D chess thing to move away from a confrontation with Iran, because Flynn seemed to be steering towards a confrontation with Iran. Hard to say. We'll see who we get in there next and see what direction we take it from here.
Yeah, for me, this is a really interesting situation going on because on one hand, as Jay said, there are a couple concerns with Flynn, primarily based on Iran. He was warmongering with Iran. We know, as we've talked about in the past, Trump saying he's going to be the most pro-Israel president ever. We know Israel has a real interest in going after Iran. We know that Israel has really affected the foreign policy of America for a while. So that connection is very easy to make. It also seems that Flynn really buys into this ideology of Islam versus the U.S. or, Western Empire versus Islam. And Bannon kind of ties into that. He wrote a book, Flynn, about it. So he definitely seems to believe in that. I almost think, I watched him speak a little bit about it. I almost think he kind of genuinely believes it as opposed to selling it, but maybe my instinct a little off. But there are a couple other things that are really interesting about Flynn, though. Flynn has called out the U.S. drone program and said that it's counterproductive. It actually causes more terrorists than it kills. This was a year ago that he said this. And so that is pretty interesting. And he also was the highest military intelligence person to come out and state that we knew exactly what we were doing, funding Al-Qaeda rebels over in Syria because we wanted to take out Assad. He's the only person to be on record that high up in military intelligence to say that. Again, that's a bold statement because no one on record is saying that because they're still trying to hold to this narrative that they're fighting ISIS and democracy and freedom and whatnot. So again, and then you have his son who was tweeting really hardcore about Pizzagate. He was laying into it. He wasn't holding back and he wasn't pussyfooting around with his tweets. And so that is another data point that I find very interesting. So you put those three together and it seems like, yeah, you have the other ones too. So there is a give and take. There's no longer do I look at things in idealistic terms of perfect or not. There's good and then there's some bad. But overall, Flynn seemed to have some positives, and you got to wonder if what's going on now, if there's going to be someone worse in there. I know David Petraeus' name is being floated around. David Petraeus he leaked worse information than he leaked a lot of stuff that never should have got out, and he got a slap on the wrist. David Petraeus is heavily involved with counterinsurgency in the Middle East. So that would be even worse. I even saw, so Kyle Kalinske, who runs the Secular Report, he was even saying, like, look, this Flynn, when you take it into consideration, he might be better than what we would have gotten before. So I find it really interesting that they went and they called him out for talking to a Russian ambassador, like when Obama put sanctions on Russia for the Russian hacking, which, again, looks like bullshit. He was like, look, we're going to lift him, don't worry. So they recorded that conversation. They illegally leaked it to people inside the government. Again, that's an illegal act that they did. And now, like, so the question is, why are they doing this? Because we know they're swiping up everything. You know, they got people doing this, talking to ambassadors. They got every politician doing that. This is like of course, like ambassadors talk. So he didn't even do anything illegal. So, you know, it really is the question of it's maybe they have. I think there's something deeper going on. They got some blackmail. Or maybe Trump is trying to capitulate to the establishment. Luke Rudowski was talking about that. I think Trump feels pressure to give them what they want a little bit. I feel like they're holding something over them more personally, and especially the core members like Bannon and Conway and Trump, and Flynn was a core member, like longtime Trump supporter, and outspoken on some things. So it definitely seems like a deliberate attack that they usually don't do things like this. So, but the question is why Trump they could have fought this longer. He didn't have to do the resignation. So it seems something else is going on. Either Trump's, you know, trying to bide more time, or they have some type of more blackmail underneath that. And they're like, okay, we'll use this as a public cover, but we have something deeper on you. That would be my, prognosis of it so far.
Yeah, and it also continues the narrative of, you know, Trump is somehow a Russian operative, or Putin controls Trump. There is some discussion, I've seen it a few different places, that if and when Trump and the new Justice Department does go after high-level people implicated in Pizzagate, that the media will spin it as, well, Russian hackers just put child porn on their computers, and this is actually a coup. This is Trump orchestrating a coup against his political opponents and arresting them and rounding them up based on completely bogus information. So this attack on General Flynn continues that narrative quite nicely. So it's interesting to see how that fits in. But we'll see what tomorrow brings.
Yeah, we've definitely seen the revitalization of the Russian narrative after these, you know, this back and forth with Flynn. But I think the most interesting dynamic at play here is the hypocrisy, as always, with the idea that the one side is now saying that it is just unheard of to have politicians lying, or which is just really absurd. And I think we can all admit that the idea that there's a lie happening is just like the end of the world. It's just ridiculous with how much fabrication and manipulation goes on within our political system. But, you know, what's interesting is that, you know, no one is calling for the arrest of these officials or an investigation. And how is that any different from, I mean, there are differences, but how is it different from an Assange or a Snowden or a Manning? The idea that these gentlemen broke the law, and now because it's seen in some kind of a greater good light, that it's now okay. You know, it's just hypocrisy at its finest. And you know, we have to ask the question, why are there so many leaks coming from Washington, which Donald Trump, I believe, tweeted out recently? And it's a very good question. You know, whatever side you're on, I think we have to acknowledge the fact, for, you know, really both sides, that leaks of these nature are a good thing. Because today it seems like the only way Americans have any way of finding out the truth is through leaks like this. However, they are still against the law, and that has to be acknowledged as well. We can't dance both sides of this and jump back and forth whenever it suits our side, which is what happens in everything in this country. And, you know, we're really seeing that, but these are absolute felonies. And I think that's something that we choose to ignore. You know, it's interesting, as Glenn Greenwald concisely put it. He said, "This is how political power in the addled partisan brain in DC functions. Those in power always regard leaks as a heinous crime, while those out of power regard it as a noble act. They seamlessly shift sides as their positions in DC changes. But this is just the tawdry, craven game of Washington. People with no actual beliefs shamelessly take diametrically opposed views on fundamental political questions based exclusively on whether it helps or hurts their leaders. Thus, the very same Democrats who just 3 months ago viewed illegal leaking as a grave sin today view it as an act of heroic, or an act, I guess he wrote that incorrectly, a heroic act. #resistance, which is pretty funny. I mean, that's just absolutely spot on. And I think that's something that we have to continually admit to ourselves as we fall into this duopoly game that's happening.
These are the types that like to paint me as the villain, but I'm thankful I've been given a chance to play that role for them, cause to live is to dance. And whether it's with the devil or with an angel, I seduce to put bread upon the table. Been indoctrinated, changed and intoxicated, complicated. My actions taken out and moderated, God forsaken, thrown to the curb, not even